New Orleans. Welcome to the Student Affairs Zoom panel session for parents about supporting students as they return home for the holidays. My team and I are happy to be with you today, and we hope that you and your loved ones are staying healthy and safe. Before we get started with the panel, I'd like to outline a few Zoom rules. Out of respect for the panelists and the desire to share as much information as possible, all participants except our panelists will be muted. Participants will be able to ask questions via the Q&A function. The chat function has been disabled in order for us to focus on Q&A. Panelists will answer as many questions as possible in the time allotted. Thank you so much for your cooperation. I'd like to introduce our parent panelists. Our parent panelist is Lisa Curran. Lisa is the mother of a Loyola sophomore who is majoring in environmental science and minoring in sociology and Spanish. She is a freelance educator working with teens and ESL students. She lives in suburban Philadelphia and has 3 children, one of whom is a second-year student at Loyola. Lisa is also one of the volunteer administrators for the Loyola Parent Facebook group. So welcome, Lisa. Nice to have you with us today. Thank you. So our run of show today will spend approximately 15 to 30 minutes on questions for our panelists. And then that'll be followed up by another 15 minutes of information from our campus resource administrators, our Director for Residential Life, Amy Boyle, and our Director for Student Health and University Counseling, Asia Wong. At the end, we will conclude with Q&A. So if there are questions that come up as our panelists are speaking or providing information, please feel free to share that in the Q&A function, and we'll be sure to get to that as soon as possible. All right, so let's get started with our panel questions. Lisa, can you tell us a little bit about what lessons you've learned in the past when your students would return home?
Yeah, so last year, we had 2 returns home that were really different from each other. And I think both of them are kind of relevant to what is going to happen in a few weeks when our student comes home. So, last year she came home at the end of the semester. Everybody was excited for her to come home. Her siblings hadn't seen her the whole semester. She didn't come home at all during the semester. So it was like this highly anticipated return. And it was already like the holidays were kind of rolling. So there was a lot of excitement. And I think the thing that we learned was just watching for her not to be completely smothered by everybody who was so excited about her coming home. And also, I think just like the level of exhaustion at the end of the semester was maybe a little bit surprising for all of us, that she just really needed a lot of space to like decompress and like recalibrate, and also figure out this balance of like resting and participating in the family, participating in the holidays. And then when March rolled around, and that was so sudden and also like a really different set of circumstances, we had a lot to negotiate about, like all these people working from home. So suddenly there were 5 people all needing to work from home, often at the same time. And so I think our big lesson was like communicating really clearly about that and where people were going to be just in different physical spaces, and respecting what everybody needed to do to kind of get their work done. And so I see those really coming together for this transition home, that the students are going to come into, a time to celebrate Thanksgiving, but then also have to really quickly go into that space of working again, and then come back out of it again for the holidays. So I think, for us, our lesson is just to make sure that we're, as a family, communicating clearly about what everybody needs and trying to leave space for all of the different things that have to happen when our student comes home. And also respecting that transition that she's going through too, especially last fall. It was her first time being away. And so that sort of, I'm part of this family, but it's different from when I left, and I feel different. I don't feel like the same person as when I left. And so, just trying to really be open to that and what that might look like within the family dynamic, especially.
Thank you, Lisa, for that perspective. So as it so happens, I'm a licensed psychologist by profession. And so as I'm hearing you talk, I do take notes and want to just kind of summarize for our attendees the valuable insights that you shared. But it sounds like the primary lessons learned are managing expectations for both the family at home and the family member returning home in terms of what that's going to look like. Noting the family member coming back into the home, the need for rejuvenation and rest that might not have been anticipated because everybody else is so excited, which is really nice. Clear communication about time and work needs, which sounds loud and clear, especially given how it's going to vacillate between what needs to be done at different points in time in November. And then it sounds like flexibility, respect, and grace for all parties involved is definitely at the top of the list, that patience with each other, and that your student coming back into the home is going to be different developmentally, both physically and socially. So that's really, really important. Thank you for that information. Great. Lisa, our next question is more of a practical question given our COVID times, our pandemic times. What are the ways, maybe top three, that you and your family will engage in your typical traditions this holiday season?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and actually one that we're still kind of trying to figure out and be open to some need to shift plans still, right, because of the constant evolution of this situation. But I think as we've talked about it a little bit, both within our family and also with our student, trying to keep some of the traditions that give us all a sense of grounding, like that are really familiar and that we've done and we can do regardless of what's happening outside of our home. So kind of sticking with the traditions we've done as a family that really just make us feel connected and also like keep us in the familiar, right? That there may be all these other things changing, but these things are still the same. Figuring out how to keep our faith life strong during the holiday season is something that's really important to our family. Even if we're not able to attend celebrations, that we're honoring that aspect of the holiday season as a family. And we typically like to do some volunteer work during the holidays, like packaging meals for people who need them. As of right now, it looks like we'll still get to do those things. So kind of, I guess, if you had to pick three, right, the faith, the family, and the community, and still looking for ways that we can keep on all of those things.
Yes, and so I hear the connectedness, the emotional connectedness is extremely important for you and your family. And it also sounds like at a time of great chaos, this is a place where you and your family can feel centered and in control because you can work together to identify those special pieces, whether it's faith life, community, family, that keep you together and really highlight your values. So that's so important at a time like this. Thank you. And Lisa, our last question it probably stems from the first question in terms of lessons learned, but do you have an important tip for our current families, especially during the pandemic, around um, welcoming your student back into the home after being on campus?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is like some of those things that we talked about, that it feels like a really familiar and safe place for them to kind of land after all of the things that they have had to work with this semester. You know, there's just been a lot of challenges that look big and small. And so um, I think as much as you can just have it be this welcoming place where they can decompress, and it should feel safe, like both physically, but also emotionally. Um, you know, I think that's one that's really important. Finding ways to connect with other people safely. So like family members that they maybe haven't seen, or their friends when they come home and they haven't seen them. Um, you know, I think it's really important to try to be really creative about what that might look like, whether you like, you know, meet somewhere where you can be outside or have a fire outside in the fire pit or something like that, just so that there is still connection that's happening even during this time. And then I think the other one is just, I think I said this before, about being ready to communicate in some ways that might be really different from how you've communicated with your student in the past. That, you know, they're in a transition, right, into like from the relationship that you had when they were growing up into the relationship that you're going to have with them as adults. And so kind of honoring that you're in that space where communication is going to start to look and feel different, and the way that they communicate with their siblings is going to be different. Just that, you know, you need to be ready to treat them, I think, in a way that's maybe evolving from when they left.
Thank you, Lisa. That's very insightful because it's some things are going to say the same, but a lot of things are going to be different. And so communicating that and talking about it, um, picking your battles potentially when those do come up in the house. Great. Thank you. So we're going to transition to the next part of our panel and talk with some of our professionals from on campus that have experienced students going home for, at this point, decades now over the course of their profession. And so each team member is going to introduce themselves and will share information about available resources and also just some information and insights that they have. So Amy, can we start with you?
Sure. Good morning or good afternoon. I'm Amy Boyle, Director of Residential Life. And Lisa, it's so great to finally meet you in video, I guess. But I know we interact regularly on the Facebook page. And so thank you for being with us today. Your points, Lisa, about the communication are exactly what I was going to talk about, and how this year is going to be really different. Whether you've experienced a home transition before, for the parents that joined us today, the differences are enormous because your student is returning and still has academic responsibilities through the end of the semester. And so while the initial return includes a nice week-long break, they'll have to jump right back into virtual learning for a couple of weeks. And so I saw a question pop up as well, and Asia was able to answer that. But they will have their end of semester assignments leading into final exams, all virtually through December 18th. And so my advice is to really decide early. So start having the conversation now about what that schedule will look like for you as a family and for your student. Maybe normally when they come home or when they're living at home, there's expectations around home responsibilities and maybe sibling care or other jobs, taking care of things around the house. And I think those things can still occur, but also with their academics in mind, that clock will still be ticking of turning in assignments and maybe finishing tests or papers or exams. And then for some of them, jumping into virtual classroom experiences. And the other thing that I want you all to know, while they won't be returning in between the Christmas breaks and Thanksgiving break, and when they do depart, if they are living on campus, they won't come back until January. But our staff and administrators and faculty will still be operating virtually throughout that time frame. So even though your student's not with us on campus, our schedule will remain consistent, and then we can continue to provide those virtual walk-in hours, phone consults, video consults. And then for those students who live in the New Orleans area or are commuting and do need space to study, we will have some facilities open to be able to offer that. So while residence halls close, our staff, faculty, and administrators still continue to support your students throughout that break as we plan and welcome them for January. And so I'll turn it over to Asia, who will share some other resources for that transition.
Absolutely. So when we talk about the normative first year transition curve, it's typically a W, which means we start high with the honeymoon phase. Oh my God, college is amazing. This is so fun. Then we have the dip, which is I'm homesick and I miss mom and I don't want to admit it. And all my friends are better at this than I am. And the first friends I met don't even like me anymore. Perhaps some of you have had some of these conversations. I see mom smiling a little bit over there. Then we go back up. Okay, I'm starting to get the hang of this. Like this is feeling good. Then the second dip, and the second dip, it varies for everyone, but typically in spring, is this all there is? I thought college was gonna blow my mind and change me fundamentally as a human being. Like, is this all there is? And then hopefully by the end, we go back up, the end of that W, to this place feels like home, right? So college is home and my home is home. I have two homes now. What you're going to get with your kid coming home for Thanksgiving, especially with the staying home all the way through Christmas, is that wobbly little deer feet of, I was just kind of starting to find my place and now I'm back here and I'm not quite sure who I am. I've been having some more adult behaviors. I've been having some more freedom. I've enjoyed that. But I've also missed home, and I'm also really excited to see all my people, not just my family, but my old friends. And so you're going to get some increased reactivity. Don't be surprised if there's a little bit more irritability or leave me alone, mom. And also maybe a little bit more on the other side, clinginess or neediness. I'm so glad to be home. College sucked. I missed you guys so much. And I'm telling you guys this so you can be prepared that I think just as our parents spoke about earlier, you know, we're all like, oh, this is so exciting, you're coming back, but they're still navigating what it means to be a person. Just help them. Just help them do that. Just help them and be that listening ear and let them know that it's okay. It's okay if they miss their friends at college. It's okay if they're super psyched to be home. It's all right. We are, with this, you know, the length of the break going home, we are here, as Amy said, virtually, even though we can't be there in person. So we are going to be providing more supportive services, more opportunities for student engagement. The University Counseling Center will be providing daily drop-ins, and those are just sort of supportive groups for students who might be feeling a little bit lonely, want to talk about transitioning home, want to miss their friends, but like feel weird about being like, am I the only one? Every day we'll have those groups. They're open. They don't have to pre-register. We put that link in the Q&A. In addition, Student Success will be offering bumped up resources in terms of additional tutoring, additional coaching sessions, emergency coaching. So you all will be getting an email about that shortly over break.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Asia and Amy. As our panelists were speaking, I posted a couple of links in the chat function. And there's a question about saving the links posted in the chat. And what I would suggest is maybe just cutting and pasting to a Word doc or a Google Doc so that you would be able to access those at a future time, or posting in your web browser each of the links so that you can have them up. I think either way you would be able to access those. So let's move on to our questions and answers. So one of the questions in the chat in the Q&A function states, are kids who are traveling home for Thanksgiving holiday, as far as California, traveling back to Loyola for finals and then returning for end of year break back to California? Or are they expected to stay home for both breaks? So I think this captures a couple of questions that were asked in the function. And so Asia answered all learning, including finals, is virtual following November 20th. No one is expected to return to New Orleans between Thanksgiving and winter break. So I hope that clears up that question. And then there's also a question about changing a son's room to give his younger brother more space. And mom's worried about this. I'm assuming this is mom. And then my college student is aware and says he understands, but it's mixed about how to meet both of their needs or their changing needs. Very good insight there. And so Asia responds that luckily talking to both of them and prepping them for the change can be helpful to share pictures or make sure your college student feels like he's part of the process of the change instead of coming home without knowing what that will look like. So yes, quite a bit of involvement is really important to the extent that you can. And now since we're so virtual savvy, you could do that via a video call versus, or in addition to pictures and things like that. So you can really be creative about how you keep those lines of communication open. And the last question that I see on here is about feeling as though staff are not on campus, a perception by a student. So as a result of COVID, the university has taken more of a staggered approach with staff being on campus. And so, for instance, staff will be in their offices, but we'll have them in clusters so that we mitigate spread. And that was a decision that was made early on by university administrators, myself included, to make sure that campus was as safe as possible. We do have a lot of touch points for our students virtually, so that if we need to have office hours, those sorts of things were available to our students. However, campus personnel, it is staggered, so you won't see the same amount of staff and personnel on campus as you might have pre-COVID. So that's been a change. Another question just came through. Will the students need to test before coming back in January, or will the university be doing something similar upon return to campus? Asia, would you mind fielding that question, please?
Sure, absolutely. So we are working on a testing policy for return to campus. Certainly, we are encouraging students to test prior to returning, and we will also offer testing once they get on the ground. We're just kind of working out the logistics of that.
Great. Thank you, Asia. So not seeing any more questions. Again, thank you to our panelists. Lisa, really appreciate your time and insights. Thank you, Asia. Thank you, Amy. Really appreciate all of you. And thank you to our attendees for taking the time today to be with us and to hear the information. So everybody take care, and wishing you all a healthy and happy holiday season. Bye-bye.